The Cryptid Files Case 001. Deep in the forests of northern British Columbia, hikers found a forestry helmet crushed in the middle of a trail. What they didn't realize was that the creature responsible was still watching them. This recording comes from the Cryptid Files, a collection of recovered incident reports involving unknown predators in the wilderness of Canada being investigated by the secretive organization, the CMCC, also known as the Canadian Ministry of Cryptid Control. Here is Case 001, the forestry helmet. The first thing they found was the helmet. It lay in the middle of the trail, bright orange against the dark soil of the forest floor. At a distance, it looked like someone had simply dropped it while working in the woods. Forestry crews sometimes passed through the area, marking timber or checking remote survey points. But when the hikers approached, they slowed. Something wasn't right. Joel Stanton stepped forward and crouched beside it. The hard plastic shell was cracked down the middle, as if something enormously powerful had crushed it from above. Mud clung to the surface, and dark brown blood had dried along the fracture. Behind him, Jacob shifted uneasily. "Forestry accident?" he asked. Joel shook his head slowly. No chainsaw marks, no branches, nothing fell on it. The trail around them stretched quietly through the forest, disappearing into towering firs and cedars. The mountains rose silently beyond the trees, their peaks hidden behind low gray clouds. Susie Stanton felt a chill crawl through her skin. "Maybe we should keep moving," she said. No one argued. But before they left, Jacob began recording the helmet and the area, pulling the phone from his pocket. Seeing Joel and Susie already leaving, he left his film still recording as he raced to catch up with them. They left the helmet where it lay and continued down the narrow trail, their boots crunching over damp pine needles. The forest here was ancient, the trees thick and tall enough to swallow the daylight. The deeper they walked, the quieter everything became. No birds, no insects, just a distant whisper of wind moving high above the canopy. Joel noticed it first. "Anyone hear that?" The others stopped. For a moment there was nothing. Then somewhere in the woods off the trail, something heavy shifted. Branches snapped. Jacob frowned. Probably a deer? But Joel wasn't convinced. The sound had been too heavy. Too slow. They stood there for several seconds, staring into the dark wall of trees beside the trail. Nothing moved. Eventually they continued hiking, though the uneasy silence followed them like a shadow. Nearly an hour later they reached a small clearing where the trail curved around a steep ravine. Susie lingered behind the group, adjusting her pack strap and glancing back the way they had come. Something had caught her eye. At first she thought it was just sunlight reflecting through the trees. Then it blinked, two faint glimmers deep in the forest. Her stomach tightened. "Joel?" He turned. "What's up?" Susie pointed towards the trees. "I think something's watching us." The others looked, but saw nothing except thick undergrowth and dark trunks disappearing into shadow. Jacob chuckled nervously. Probably a squirrel? But Susie didn't laugh, because the eyes had moved. They were lower now, closer to the ground. Joel stepped off the trail slightly, peering deeper into the forest. Hello? The forest remained silent. Then somewhere out there, something exhaled, ending in an intimidating hiss. Not a small animal, not a deer, something large, very large. A low rustling moved through the brush, circling slowly through the trees. Joel stepped back onto the trail. All right, he said quietly. Let's keep moving. The group began walking faster now, the unease growing heavier with every step. Behind them, the forest shifted again. This time, Susie heard it clearly. Footsteps, heavy ones, matching their pace. Something was following them. Jacob stopped suddenly and turned around. Okay, I definitely heard that. Joel stared into the trees again. For a moment, something massive moved between the trunks. Then it vanished. The group stood frozen. What the hell was that? Joel whispered. No one answered. The forest had gone completely still again. Joel forced a nervous laugh. Bear, maybe. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Because bears didn't move like that, and bears didn't watch people for miles without making a sound. They were halfway down the trail when Susie made a fatal mistake. She stepped off a few meters from the path to get a better look similar to what Joel had done. I'll catch up, she called. The others nodded and continued walking, though they slowed their pace. For a moment, Susie stood alone in the forest. The silence pressed in around her. Then she saw something on the ground. Another piece of forestry equipment. A high visibility vest torn nearly in half. Blood soaked into the fabric, and beside that lay another helmet. This one more intact, but filled with bloody water. Her heart began pounding. Oh my God. Something shifted behind her. Susie turned slowly. At first she saw nothing, then two enormous eyes opened in the shadows. They were positioned far too high off the ground to belong to any animal she knew. The pupils were thin, vertical, like a reptile, and they were staring directly at her. For a moment neither of them moved. Then the creature stepped forward. It was huge. A towering reptilian shape with thick scaled skin and a long tail that swayed slowly behind it. Its head lowered slightly, studying her with cold, predatory curiosity. Susie tried to scream, but the creature moved first. It lunged from the trees with terrifying speed. Her scream finally tore through the forest. On the trail ahead, Joel and Jacob spun around. Susie! They saw the trees explode with movement. A massive dark shape dragged her screaming into the undergrowth. Branches snapped violently, leaves scattered into the air. Then everything went silent again. The forest swallowed the sound completely. Joel stood frozen, staring at the spot where she had vanished. Jacob whispered in horror. What was that? Because deep within the tree, something enormous had begun moving again, and it was no longer alone. And now they were trapped, as from both sides of the trail, two massive reptile forms closed in on the two isolated men, staring them down. The last thing they heard was an eerie hiss coming from the elongated snouts of the creatures as they closed in, staring at the men with their slit, predatory eyes. Jacob realized he was still holding his phone, and that it was still documenting everything. He raised it in time, only to scream as he realized he was recording his demise. Days later, a black uniformed tactical team scoured the area, securing the site and clearing the area. Nothing was ever found of the three unfortunate hikers except for Jacob's Android phone, laying just beside the trail. One of the CMC officers picked it up and proceeded to bring it to the team's staging area at the entrance to the path, where he spotted his supervisors. Two black-suited agents looked over a map over the region that was opened on the hood of a dark SUV. He approached them. "Sirs, I found this," and handed a device to them. One of the agents took it. The device was out of battery power, so they took it inside the vehicle, hooking it up to the laptop inside. The device was still working, blinking as it began to charge. Once it had sufficient power, the agents turned it on, and it had recorded everything and caught the moment the two men were surrounded. The last image was the huge open maw on the beast as it was attacking. The agents shifted uncomfortably, and then one of them sighed before speaking. "Relic class, and it is a big one." "I'll send for another team," the other agent said. "The hunting is not over." This has been the first entry in the Cryptid Files. And remember, if you ever see eyes in the forest, make sure the pupils aren't vertical. Thank you for listening, and if you like eerie stories like this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you go into the deep woods, something may be watching you. We'll see you next time on the Cryptid Files.